Welcome back to episode 3 of season 3 of Sleep for Performance Radio. Today I am joined by Dr. Lachlan Giles and Professor Lachlan Giles. The reason we give him 2 titles, which we talk about in this episode, is because, well, first of all, Lachlan has a PhD in physiotherapy, and also he is a black belt who also goes by the title of Professor, or most black belts do. But in this episode, Lachlan discusses why he doesn't like it. For those of you who come to this episode, you may know Lachlan Giles as an international worldwide Jiu Jitsu practitioner, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioner. He's pretty famous in the world of Jiu Jitsu. He has appeared on the EBI, the Eddie Bravo Invitational. He's appeared on Polaris and many other international Jiu Jitsu competitions. You may have seen him on UFC Fight Pass or other pay-per-view Jiu Jitsu competitions, and he has also been a competitor in the ADCC, an international grappling competition. Lachlan comes from Melbourne in Australia, and he runs his own school there called Absolute MMA in St Kilda. It's a great school, and if you ever get a chance to go and train there with those guys, they are world-class, probably one of the best Jiu-Jitsu schools in the country. In this episode with Lachlan, we discuss Jiu-Jitsu, how he travels, how he studies or has done research, and how he basically balance all these different things. Preparing for competition whilst running a school back in Australia. And I think as of recording this right now, this intro, Lachlan is competing in Europe, so he's constantly on the move and trying to run a school. And he did that as well whilst he was doing his PhD, so if anybody can give us some tips and tricks on managing it yourself, it will be Lachlan. So before we get into the episode, we do have an advertisement there from Nordic Fitness. If you do want to avail of the special offer, there is a code associated with that. And that code, which is not mentioned in the ad, is SLEEP, S-L-E-E-P, Ian, I-A-N, that's me, D20. That's SLEEP, Ian, D20. And if you use that, you'll get a 20% discount at the checkout. So this is a great course. And actually, I was one of the lecturers on this course, and other worldwide international sort of speakers have been on this course as well, as sleep recovery specialist course. So go over and check it out, and if you do want to buy a Sleep END 20, and you get 20% off at the checkout there. As always, you can follow us at sleep4performance.com.au on Facebook and on the website, and on Twitter at sleep4perform. And if you wish to email me, it's iandunican at sleep4performance.com.au. Now into the advert for about 15 seconds, and then we'll be into the episode.
Exercise and diet are well established in society as 2 pillars for optimizing our health. However, both are supported by a foundation that is often forgotten, yet even more integral to our health, namely sleep. The Sleep Recovery Specialist course is an innovative online education experience that provides an in-depth knowledge base, important sleep assessment tools, and a wide range of effective strategies for supporting clients to improve their sleep habits and behaviors. Improve your sense of happiness and well-being, daily energy and alertness, recovery from physical training, reduce risk of obesity and diabetes, and reduce your appetite and sweet cravings. Achieve all of this and more. For further information and to enroll online, please visit www.nordicfitnesseducationblog.com.
Welcome back to Sleep for Performance Radio, Season 2, Episode 3, Version Number 2. We've just been speaking for 28 minutes and we lost the entire recording.
No, we did.
I don't know what to say. It's a Sunday evening. I don't need this shit on a Sunday evening. I just want to relax. But anyway, thanks, Lucky, for doing that again. Today I'm joined by Dr. or Professor Lachlan Giles. Which would you prefer?
I prefer doctor. I don't like the jiu-jitsu professor term. I think I think of as professor as a academic professor. So
academic professor, yeah.
So which is not me. So I'll go with doctor.
So someone said to me recently, it's harder to get a black belt in jiu-jitsu than to get a PhD, and I said, I don't know about that, but anyway, I'm not going to fight you on it. So, so anyway, so
maybe it takes longer. I don't know. Yeah.
If you think about degree, masters, PhD, all added together, that could be close enough on 10 years, nearly every day. So,
well, you also got to include high school education as well. So. Because a lot of yeah.
Wow, I'm a black belt in school.
That's right. Yeah.
So today I'm joined by Dr. Lachlan Giles, doctor, and Lachlan is, for those of you who may know, is a competitive jiu-jitsu athlete competing here in Australia and on the world stage as well. In conjunction with that, Lachlan also has a PhD in the area of physiotherapy. So Lachlan, do you want to give us a quick background of how you got into doing jiu-jitsu and martial arts?
Yep. When I was in high school, I watched a few kung fu movies, and watching one person beat up, 20 people at once, I thought, oh, it would be cool if I could do that. So I went and looked around and enrolled in a kung fu school that was near where I lived. And the coach there had trained a little bit of jiu-jitsu and incorporated some of that into his style. So I was exposed to grappling a little bit at that stage, but not heaps. And then at some point, like most people's, at least when I first started, this was most people's story in starting jiu-jitsu, which was after watching Royce Gracie in UFC 1. I saw him beat up people from other martial arts, and I thought, well, if this one seems to be winning, then I better start some jiu-jitsu. So then I got started and went from there. Didn't stop.
And so when you were doing jiu-jitsu, did you ever think about actually doing MMA as well? Did that ever appeal to you?
Yeah, I think actually that's probably what I was more interested. Like when I was first started, I wasn't interested in jiu-jitsu as a sport so much as I was interested in like learning self-defense basically. So I started, like I used to watch a lot of UFC and even Pride back in those days. And in fact, even for my jiu-jitsu, most of my inspiration for the techniques I would use were like grappling moves that I saw in UFC or Pride more so than at the World Championships. Like I would now be, obviously I very rarely watch MMA for grappling inspiration nowadays. I usually will watch like a high-level jiu-jitsu competition, because I think it's much more advanced what's going on there when you're not having to worry about someone punching you in the head.
Yeah. What do you think of the new competition that Sakuraba has, the quintet? What's your...
I think it's a really good format. Yeah, it adds an extra element to just like... the thing is, at the moment, if an event's on at the moment, like if it's a boring match, then you're not invested in it at all. Like all that matters is whoever wins or loses that match. But when it's the quintet format, like even if it's a boring match, it still actually matters overall to which team wins. So you can still be a bit more invested in who wins even the match that you're not so interested in normally.
And will we see an absolute team compete in the quintet?
I'd like that. I'm waiting for someone to approach me. That would be good. Yeah, that'd be really good.
We actually were speaking about this the other day in our gym in Western Australia. We were talking about different forms of quintet at the Academy of Mixed Martial Arts, and we were thinking about maybe you would have a black belt, a brown belt, a purple belt, a blue belt, and a white belt, plus the weight. That would be interesting. That'd be something to do. But then somebody was saying, somebody was asking if Absolute in Melbourne was having a quintet. Was it going to be in quintet? And I said, oh, I don't know. I said it would be cool to see them in it, but people were saying yourself, Craig Jones, Kit Dale, and what's the other gentleman's name? Brown belt, Mishka. How do you pronounce it? Mikhail. Between all of you guys, you'd have a pretty strong team. Like,
I think we could have a good team. Yeah, it'd be really cool if they did that. That'd be really good. But,
well, I think Sakuraba and the UFC listens to this podcast, so hopefully, they'll hit you.
That's good. Yeah.
So Lucky, at what age did you start competing? When did you start getting into it from a competitive standpoint of view? When did you really want to kind of, start mixing it up with some of the big boys, so to speak, in jiu-jitsu?
I probably didn't I started competing pretty much from when I started. Actually, I think my first competition ever was I fought a girl, and I won.
Well done, Lucky.
I think I won I won a training bag for fastest finish in that match, and that was the training bag I used for the next 10 years, I think. So.
I have no comment on that. I don't know what to say on that. You beat up a girl for a bag.
Yeah, exactly.
And so this is how you and Liv met, was it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You were obviously a kid. Let's make that clear. You were complete as a kid. Yeah.
Probably 50 kilos, and I think so. This girl was. I think she was from the States. Like she was. I think she was decent, and she was in Melbourne for I don't know what for, but she wanted to go in the competition, and she was the only girl. So the obvious matchup was to put because she would have been much lighter than the rest of the guys. So the obvious matchup for her was to put her against the kid. Yeah. But I knew one thing, which was an armbar, I think then, and that's what I did.
And so when did you start competing seriously? When you start doing like sort of Pan Pacs, ADCC, all these big jiu-jitsu competitions? What age were you when you started getting into those?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think when I think I went in Pan Pacs and on the Machado Nationals, sort of as I was coming up through purple belt, but I think probably not until I was like 21, 22 that I started to like, thinking about trying to win, like Pan Pacs as more of a goal than just like, I'll just jump into competition because it's on sort of thing. So
more focused. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what's your lineage, Lachlan, from a jiu-jitsu perspective, like, tracing it back to the source? Who did you train under to get your black belt? And
it's sort of changed a bit because I started out under Tyrone Cross, and he was running Hangar 4, which is where I first initially started, which was at an airport hangar in Essendon. And then I think I got up to purple belt under Tyrone, and then that school like split up, and Hangar 4 moved to like a totally different suburb, which was Preston. And I stuck with it, but I think Tyrone lost interest in coaching for a moment, so he stopped coaching there. And then they brought John Simon on, who I got my black belt under John Simon, who's John Will's first black belt. So I guess it's a John Will, Higan Machado lineage in terms of my black belt. John Simon then sort of he had a few injuries, and he basically he basically hadn't been able to roll, so he decided he's actually just going to give up jiu-jitsu, which was a real shame because he was really good, great coach. And so that was, I was a black belt then, and I didn't have a coach. And probably a year later, Liv and I traveled around for a bit. Even represented Alliance for a moment, Alliance Jiu-Jitsu, because we trained there for 6 months for the World. So I had Fabio Gurgel signing off on my certificate at some point. But then when we opened up Absolute, so I'm now grading under Tiago Stefanuti, who's the head coach at Absolute. So.
All right, so you had a bit of a kind of a gypsy career as a.
That's right. Yeah.
Coming up. Yeah.
Well, actually, it does reflect my, like I had a lot of influences from a lot of different clubs throughout my development as well. I think somehow, as a brown belt, maybe late purple brown, I managed to sort of transcend the politics a bit, and I was training, with the guys at Dominance, the Australian Elite Team, some of the guys from Devines, at Absolute. I was sort of able to train with a whole bunch of people, which I actually attribute a large amount of my improvements to, because I got exposed to a lot of different styles of games, which I think, especially before the internet era, before everyone could just kind of look up what Rafael Mendes was doing and copy that and watch him teach a class and do that. Like everyone pretty much just did what their coach does. Like there's no large outside influences on people's jiu-jitsu. So going around to different gyms and seeing those different styles and being exposed to it was a massive help.
And for you now as a coach, do you encourage your students to cross-train at other clubs, or are you? Cause
I do. Yeah.
Because the reason I'm asking, for people who don't know, in jiu-jitsu, some people are like, you cannot train any other club, and some people get kicked out of clubs for training elsewhere, even if they're on holidays in a different country. So it's kind of very much this closed kind of door on some clubs, but other clubs are very open. Like where I train, we can train wherever we want. We're on holidays, we can train wherever. So that's why I was asking that question. So some people might be like, well, what's that got to do with anything? But in jiu-jitsu, there is some crazy kind of thoughts around this, So that's why.
Yeah, I can see why some coaches would be like pushing for that, but I don't know if I can't come to a conclusion other than it's a more greedy, selfish sort of thing. Like it's clearly advantageous to allow someone to roll with different people and experience different games and so on. Yeah, I can't really see too many negative sides. Maybe like maybe if you don't want your you got some crazy spazzy student that injures everyone, you might not want them to go to another gym, and they'll think you're all nuts from that gym, like from like how well they represent the club point of view or something. I don't know, but like for me, I'm happy for our students to train anywhere. I encourage it. I think it's good.
Yeah, like when I first started, even as a white belt, I trained in the US when I was there for work and so on. So I'm sure there's probably people in a gym in Utah going, that Australian guy that sounds Irish, that's actually 40 but looks like he's 70. Yeah, he was a bit spazzy. So I think,
oh, really?
I think that's what they'd be saying about me, So I went and trained at a Carlson Gracie school in Maui, and I had just finished doing a 100-mile run a few days before that. I got to Hawaii and was like, I got to go and train some jiu-jitsu. So I was down about like 71 kilos, and I was like completely depleted. And I went in, and they were just throwing me around. I was still a white belt, and they were like looking at me, and I said, I just ran 100 miles the other day. They were probably going, this guy is not only crap at jiu-jitsu, but he's also a liar as well, So I just remember getting absolutely murked, So yeah. But there you go, people. Anybody can do it. They even give me a brown belt out of pity last week. So, if I can do it.
Congratulations for that, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I call it a tan belt. It's a light brown belt.
tan belt.
Yeah. I went
it's the first tan you've got. Yeah.
I'm actually quite tanned at the moment. I've been doing a lot of swimming. Really? Yeah. I was rolling with somebody the other night, and my gi came up and they went, how tanned are you, in the middle of a roll? I was like, I've been swimming, as I was going upside down. So speaking of competitions and rolling, Lucky, when you do compete against these international people like JT Torres, Robert Satoshi, all these kind of high level people you see on Metamoris, or Metamucil, as some people call it, when you see people in all these different competitions, do you get kind of weirded out when you go to kind of start these competitions and the camera is on and, it's live and people are watching? Does it make you nervous?
Yeah, I think sometimes, yes. Like, I mean, obviously, every time I compete, you have some level of nerves. So I've never just felt absolutely nothing. But I actually think I get more nervous when I'm expected to win than when I'm fighting, a big name. If that makes sense. So I feel it's you get nervous from the pressure you put on yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're fighting a JT Torres, you're like, okay, this is my chance to, go hard, potentially, cause an upset and, shock the world. Whereas it can be, you're fighting, local guy from down the road who on paper you should beat. You can be more nervous for that sometimes because, like, if I mess up, this could look really bad, which it's funny because in reality, everyone knows that no one actually cares how you do it except yourself. And then, like, you see this people so nervous, you're like, just relax. No one actually cares, like, at all.
Yeah.
I mean, they want you to do well, but they don't care. Like, they don't care. Like, they want you to do well for your sake, more so than they're going to think less of you because you won or lost a competition. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but what about the night before one of those competitions, Lucky? Let's say like an EBI, it's going to be on UFC Fight Pass. It's all these high level people. You're in this, like, this big tournament. Yeah. What's it like the night before? Is it nerving? Do you sleep well? Is it okay?
I think that's definitely something that's gotten better over time. Like, I'm pretty good at not really thinking about it until day of the comp or when I arrive to the competition. Now, like a big competition, maybe the day before, for every now and then I'll think about it, and for a moment it'll bother me. But you went back a long time ago. I'd be stressing out for a full week, before a competition. That was quite a while away. But I think the more you compete, the less of that you get.
The less nerves, yeah. And what about when you're, let's say, before a competition? You probably cut some amount of weight. Do you cut weight these days anymore for a comp?
I try to as little as I can, but as less often as I can. Yeah. But yeah, like for a big competition, like for No-Gi Worlds at the end of the year, I'll drop a little bit of weight. That'll be an interesting one actually, because I got ADCC beforehand, and then so that'll be
And so, what weight classes will you compete there?
So ADCC will be 77, and then I'm hoping to get to 73 the following week. 70, yeah. So
okay,
it'll be a 4 kilo week somehow.
Will you be?
Reed can be all over it.
I was going to say we should consult our friend Dr. Reed Reel, who
yes.
did his PhD in weight cutting. So Reed is also a black belt, and myself, Reed, and Lockie have laughed many a time. So yeah.
So we all actually met at the Australian Institute of Sport for a judo. For anyone who's listening, Ian and Reed and I actually I knew Reed already, but we all met at the Australian Institute of Sport for a judo training camp.
That's right. Yeah,
I was doing a study there, and I was doing the physio work there. And
that was interesting. That was because I walked onto the mats and Reed goes, "Oh, there's a guy coming today. He's really good at jiu-jitsu." And luckily was all like nice and quiet and put on his gi. And I was like, "Oh, he's the same size as me. I know he's a black belt, but he's the same size as me. This will be all right." And next minute, I was just like mashed into the mat. I was like, "Your jiu-jitsu style does not represent your." People say that people say your jiu-jitsu is very much your personality, and so because my personality is probably going to be then because I just go for heel hooks and ankle locks. I'm a sneaky, I'm a sneaky person, but yours wasn't that at all. You were all mild mannered, and then you were just like mash me into the mat and absolutely breaking my legs apart with half guard smashing past, and I was like, "This is bullshit. This is not right." But then I saw you doing it to Reed, and Reed was a brown belt at the time, so I didn't feel too bad, And Reed's about 95 kilos, so I was like, "All right, it's not that bad." But yeah, that's how we all met. There was a big judo camp with Japanese judo, Australia and New Zealand. So yeah, and we're actually doing a study there on looking at the effects of electronic devices at the time, which was quite interesting. So, Lucky, how do you normally sleep then? Like when you're in a training camp or at home, let's say back in Melbourne, what's a normal week of sleep for you?
Pretty much so every day I train at 10 a.m. and that's every day of the week. So Monday to Sunday. So I usually try to get up about 9 a.m. So, and I usually will sleep around 12 or 1 o'clock. So I'm getting like 8 to 9 hours a night if everything goes well. Occasionally I'll have to get up a little earlier for something, but usually I feel like for me, if I get less than 7 hours sleep, like during the day, I'm useless. Like useless. I'll have to nap, or else I'll just conk out. I don't know. Some people are like that, and I'm one of them. So
yeah, but you're more of a. It sounds like you're more of a nighttime person or an owl chronotype because you're going to bed late and getting up late. If you were free of any training, would you still do the same?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Have you always been like that?
Just reminded me of like school holidays when I was 14 or something, and I'm pretty sure I would stay up till like 3 a.m. and sleep until midday, and for no reason. Like, yeah.
I think we've all done that.
Yeah.
So a few people asked me to ask you some questions, Lockie, on this podcast today. So you say you train 7 days a week. So the first question was, what do you do for strength and conditioning?
Well, I didn't used to do strength and conditioning. I've actually started.
Oh, really? Because I actually said I think the answer is going to be just jiu-jitsu, because that's what he told me.
I still think that's the most important thing. Yeah. No, I actually do a little bit now. Actually, it's probably more. I think there's benefits to doing it, but I think because my ultimate goal is ADCC, and I want to try to do really well in ADCC, and wrestling's so important. And I think wrestling you have to be explosive.
Yeah,
you have to be able to lift people up, and you have to be explosive. And I think because I've had a very slow, methodical jiu-jitsu style for a while. I've never been a real fast twitch sort of person. It's been a hard task trying to adapt to wrestling where it's a lot faster. So yeah, I've been trying to do a lot of strength work based around, well, not a lot, but actually I'm trying to do what a pharmacologist would call a minimal required effective dose.
Yeah. Which
is basically like the minimum amount possible that will still have an effect. So I'm not doing like, heaps of sets to fatigue, like someone might do if they're doing just a strength training program, but like just enough that I think will improve my strength and power, but not impact my ability to train and improve my technique.
So how many of those sessions would you normally do in a week? One or two?
I'm trying to do 2 a week.
2 a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you using more like traditional kind of bench press, deadlift, squat, or are you going more with kettlebells and functional movement type stuff?
Yeah, and I'm more like, so I'm not really doing bench press. Like I'm doing box squats. Some of the, like I had a powerlifter go through some of this like program for me, which was like a basically, I'm actually horrible with the weightlifting terms. I know what the movement is, but I think it's a clean, but just like how he does that, because it's obviously they need a lot of power to do that, and it's quite relevant to the same sort of movement. So a lot of it's, most of it's leg based. What I'm doing, and I've been doing a little bit of grip training as well, because I think grips are extremely important for grappling. If you've got strong grips, that's actually one thing I've noticed. I've never rolled a top jiu-jitsu person that didn't have crazy strong grips.
Yeah.
Like a really high level. Like when Craig grabs your wrist, like it's very different to anyone else in the gym. It's like very noticeable. He grabs your wrist and you're like, all right, I'm not moving my hand now. Whereas anyone else, you can kind of fight to free that. So it's just like the advantage that gives you to be able to control someone just from a grip is yeah.
But was he always like that? Because I remember when I first met Craig at the old Absolute place in South Yarra, he was quite skinny. He was like 75, 76 kilos. What did he start doing? Did he get on some crazy diet, or did he just
started lifting? I don't think he used to lift. Lifting and eating, I guess. Yeah. I don't know, like, because we were both going to do ADCC at 77 kilos. This is the most recent one, ADCC, so last year. This would have been like probably 2 years ago then. We're both going to compete at 77 kilos, and we decided that we would have an in-house fight, me against Craig, and whoever wins gets to stay at 77, and whoever loses goes up to 88. And I think we went for like 20 or 30 minutes. Like it kept being like no score, or we would both score within the thing, and the points are even. And then I think I somehow something happened, and I managed to get a takedown or something and win that. But I'm glad that was then, because that wouldn't happen now. By the time the actual ADCC came around, he was just an absolute beast. So obviously, you saw him beating Leandro Lowe and so on. But so he went up to 88, and I guess because he qualified for that, he decided he was going to try and actually be closer to that weight range.
Yeah, he's absolutely massive guy now compared to what he was.
Oh, he's like 95 kilos or something. Yeah.
I think at Quintet last week he weighed in at 88 or something. It said, or
oh really?
Like
okay.
Yeah, I think that's who was in Quintet, but I don't know if he dropped for that either. So I have no idea. But yeah, he's pretty big and strong looking now. So he's not like he's I remember rolling with him. He was a purple belt and he was 75, 76 kilos, and he was strong, but he was pretty skinny. Like he wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I did a seminar with him a few months ago, and he grabbed me the same thing as you, and I thought, oh shit, this guy is like made of steel now, So yeah, so he's hitting his peak and I'm declining. So it's quite different. So Lucky, in conjunction with the jiu-jitsu sort of career that you have, you also have this PhD in physiotherapy that you obtained probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago you finished?
Yeah. When was it? Yeah, it's probably close to 2 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this has led to a new thing in your academy where you've been doing some research. I don't know if it's not really so much linked with physio, but you do have those scientific skills around research and development and, research questions and writing papers. And I hear recently on the Raspberry Ape podcast where Ben Hodgson blurted out that you were doing a study, but then couldn't give any information about it, that you were doing a study around learning techniques for jiu-jitsu practitioners. Can you tell us a little bit about that study you're doing? Yeah,
so when we were in Thailand, we had a guy, his name was Tom, he's from the UK, but I think he leads the athletic development for the Qatar track and field team. So he's pretty high up in like skill acquisition and in that position. So we were talking about class structure and different ways of training, and I was very curious from what he'd read on the research, he's very well read in the research and literature in that field. Like, what does he think the best way to train jiu-jitsu was?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things. I think the problem I have with the current research, not the problem, like it's a area that hasn't really been studied, but like jiu-jitsu is extremely complicated. So a lot of the research has been on things like, you shoot a basketball. So this is basically like one of the main things is random versus block training. So basically, if you are trying to get good at shooting a basketball, if you stand in the one shot spot and shoot the ball over and over again, you will get better within that session at getting the ball in the hoop. But when you retest it the next time, or like, if you give them a scenario where in a game you had to try to shoot the ball, you wouldn't have improved as much at it as if in one session you're actually moving around from different spots shooting the ball. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So that's random versus block, as they call it. Block is doing the same thing over and over, and random is different things. But so which is really interesting. But my question is like, at least my question is, how random does it need to be, and what because even though that's random, like you're shooting it from a different area, it's still pretty much the same. Like it's still a pretty simple task. Yeah. You could argue that because then the implications are that maybe you're better off in jiu-jitsu instead of doing your half guard sweep over and over again for 5 minutes in a row, like as drilling. Like maybe you're better off doing a bunch of different moves at different times, because it's like it's as in like, so you do a half guard sweep, then do a pass, then something else, and then come back and do a half guard sweep, or like working different things at once would be better than doing the same thing over and over again. That's what the research would say. But I think there's a lot of extra factors, at least from me thinking about it. That this is not, I'm not talking from an academic point of view, because my expertise is not in skill acquisition. So someone might be able to tell me whether I'm right or wrong here. But like, for example, if you were doing the half guard sweep over and over again, you might be recognizing things each time. Like each time you might be recognizing areas that weren't quite right and trying to fix them and so on. And sometimes, like, a lot of things need to be, I think in jiu-jitsu, like, you actually have to consciously be aware of you want to be consciously aware of what you could do to improve it for the next time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And sometimes if you did your half guard sweep and then you did 4 other techniques and you come back, you might not be quite in the same mindset to actually be trying to fix the thing that you wanted to fix again. Right? That could be the case. It could not be. But with our study that we're doing, we're actually doing that for live training. So like, is it better to work from the same position? So basically, it's for over 11 sessions. People are going to work 3 different positions if they're choosing, and they're recording whether they win or lost each time you start from your position. So let's say you're working De La Riva guard and I'm working finishing from the back or whatever. So like I come into that session and I start from the back and I have to try and finish. If I finish, I win. If they get out, then I write down a loss. Yes, so it's win or loss. And so for the first part of the study, so you do 3 sessions in a row just from the back, and then another position, 3 sessions in a row from that position. And then 3 sessions in a row from another position like that. So that's the block sort of training, and we're comparing that to random training. So to doing 3 different positions, but all train in the one session. So you rotate between the 3 positions in that one session. So it's 11. Yeah, it's 11 weeks, because we've got the initial session is a testing session. So you do all 3 positions just to get a baseline. And the 11th session is a baseline, like a final sort of assessment. So then within that, you've got 3 sets of 3 weeks on the position, or you're just doing 11 weeks straight of a random, of the 3 positions each in the same session.
So really, the goal here, Lucky, is to improve that live training. So in a normal class that you run, if I get this right, you got some technique, you have live training, and then we have like kind of open rolling. And in that live training, you might be starting from a specific position, such as underneath in half guard, on top in the mount, underneath in the mount, whatever it might be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so when you're looking, you might be just looking for an escape from underneath in the mount. You might be saying, I want to escape from this position and get a straight ankle lock.
Yeah.
But then the second time I do it, I might be underneath in half guard. And the third time I might do it, I might be starting with somebody on my back. So you keep,
exactly.
You keep going from that.
Mixing,
As opposed to constantly starting in half guard each time over and over and over and over again.
Yes. Yeah. So the research currently in skill acquisition would suggest that doing the random thing is going to be better. I don't know whether that's going to be the case or not in jiu-jitsu, but it'll be interesting to find out.
Do you have any preliminary data that indicates either way?
No, not yet, because it's going to take a while. One thing I didn't factor in, so it's going to take longer than I thought, because getting people have to do 22 sessions, and this is like at specific time points. So if they miss that, if they're away that week or whatever, then it kind of prolongs it a bit. But so no preliminary data yet, but it'll be like, we'll finish it. It'll be really interesting to look at. Yeah, going on with sleep. Here's one reason why I think working the random might be better, possibly. Usually, let's say which we know you do learn in your sleep, or like you consolidate your learning in your sleep. I'll bring it back to the podcast theme as well. But theoretically, if you've done 11 sessions on a topic, even if you're only doing it less each session, you've got 11 consolidation of the learning, like occurrences where your brain can consolidate the learning, or interpret the data that it's had to interpret overnight and then come back and improve upon, compared to the essentially 3 sessions in the other group. So it could be that that might mean that the random is better, but I also I'm really not sure.
What do you think, though, Lucky, on this?
It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, it is an interesting question. But do you know what it's bringing up for me is like it's even different learning styles. So like for me, I like that kind of structure to practice and learn at school, let's say, for example, or at uni.
Yeah. But
at jiu-jitsu, I'm so sick of learning in a structured fashion in my life that I want jiu-jitsu to be fun. So I like the randomness of it, and I would like to have all those different positions. So I would be like, okay, let's start here. Let's start in this crazy position. All those type of things. Where my wife, who's far more structured than I am, and completely on kind of personality scale is completely the opposite. She would lie on the ground and drill half guard sweeps for 2 hours straight. So do you think it might be a personality thing as well?
Possibly. I'm not sure. I think like,
did I just ruin your study?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. No. It would be interesting to know whether. I think probably if you enjoy like the training style that you enjoy is probably the one that you're going to learn more with too. I think there's a lot of factors like that. So if you like training that way, that's going to probably have a positive impact. Like I'm pretty sure. There is some research showing that if you like for learning, a skill, motor skill learning, but like if you felt like the session was productive, then you're more likely to learn. Like how you felt about the session is an important factor in whether you actually learn it, which I think kind of makes sense. Like from an evolutionary point of view, kind of makes sense. Like if you went to hunt a lion and you're successful and you felt good, then you would want to reinforce all that things that you did on that day or whatever. Whereas if you weren't successful, I don't know, maybe you're less likely to want to reinforce those habits that possibly.
So Lucky, independent of the study that you're doing now, what tips would you give to people, regardless of that study that you're running, to increase their grappling knowledge or get better pretty quick at jiu-jitsu, because you guys have got a lot of people in your gym that kind of got the black belt very quick or got very successful. And not just, I've rolled with guys there that are just, they're like me, they're sort of older amateur going there for fun, but they're very, very good. What sort of tips would you give people to accelerate their own jiu-jitsu, no matter what they were doing, whether it be competitive or amateur, having fun?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like some of these things I'm going to suggest will take a lot of time, and some of them are just more like things that you could do. So, like, I mean, I think if you can, I think especially for people early on, like drilling is really good. Getting that, you don't want to be thinking about where to put your arm or your leg while you're doing a technique. That should kind of happen because you've done it so many times that you don't have to think about the sequence of events, and then you can actually be thinking about the problems that the person's presenting you and how you're going to deal with that. Yeah. So let's say half guard sweep. If you didn't feel comfortable, like really comfortable with how to put your underhook and where to put your underhook and how to put your underhook, then you have to be thinking about that. Then you're not going to be thinking about the counter that they're doing for something else. Yeah. Whereas if the underhook comes automatically because you've done it so many times, then the rest, you can start thinking about the problems that the opponent's presenting. So I think drilling is important. Definitely having a purpose for each training session. Actually, that was something that Tom, the guy that was at Thailand, was talking about as well. But which is something I found really interesting. That like even for like a volleyball or if you're doing shot put or something, like every single training, no one ever goes to a training session just to train. There's always a purpose to they're showing up and they're like, I'm working on this particular skill set in my volleyball or whatever. Like I'm fixing this gap in my game. And I think it's exactly the same in jiu-jitsu. Like you want to show up and you want to go, okay, I'm fixing my I'm working on my half guard today or this or that, or I've been bow and arrow choked, every session. I'm going to get to that position, but I'm not let them get to that position, but I'm going to get out of that choke, whatever it is. But like showing up and actually having a purpose instead of just showing up to train or to win,
Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing. Like I would strongly recommend people to watch international level competitors, try to pick someone to emulate. I think that's the best. I think humans are pretty good at emulating, copying people. It's a lot easier than making it up yourself. So watch someone who's really high level, watch what they do, and just try to emulate what they do for like a month or whatever, or however long it takes you to feel confident with that particular move that you want to work. But I do think get good at the things that you see. Like if you watch a lot of jiu-jitsu, things that you see most commonly are the things you want to get good at. You don't want to be good at like a weird move that you've seen once. I think, like, for example, not that it can be effective, but rubber guard gets way overplayed in jiu-jitsu schools compared to how actually effective you see it in the international high-level matches. You don't see that many, like you see very few rubber guard submissions, but you'll see every gym there's like a lot of people who have gone, oh, this looks cool, I'm going to do rubber guard, instead of going like, okay, every single good jiu-jitsu guy is good at taking the back. Every single jiu-jitsu guy is like, has a good guard retention, good pass, like good knee cut pass, like the things that you see a lot like that, like taking the back, knee cut pass, guard retention, or a half guard, for example. De La Riva, you see a lot in gi, for example. But like you want to focus on that. There's a reason why you see it a lot, because it's really effective. And the more obscure and less you see something, the harder it's going to be to get to work on a good opponent. And if you're not trying to, even though you might not, not everyone here is going to, sorry, not everyone listening especially is trying to be a world champion, but you still want to make the most out of the time you put into jiu-jitsu. And in terms of like, you want to improve the most, you still want to work moves that are going to work against the most amount of people.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be that you're trying to beat the world champion in training, but you still want to do moves that would work for a world champion.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty interesting thing because even if I go for a run or I go to swimming or whatever it might be, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the pool. I'm going to do 2Ks. I'm going to do, 500 meter warm up. I'm going to do some drills and I'm going to do some sprints in the pool. That's my goal. Yeah. But I can tell you now that 99 times out of 100, I show up to jiu-jitsu. I'm like, I don't know, I just go to jiu-jitsu. It's like, and that's really interesting for me because I suppose I've always looked at jiu-jitsu as more of a kind of a fun outlet for me. It's a place where I go with some mates, have some fun, have a bit of a grapple. But in saying that, I should have at least even a primary purpose of, okay, today I'm going to work on, letting people take my back and defending, or I'm going to work on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I even noticed a massive difference. So I'm working a lot on wrestling at the moment, which is really good. Because it's a newer skill set, so there's lots more for me to improve. But I was trying to, and I'm still trying to write down, like I write down just a lesson, like just a little note, like these are the 6 dot points that I want to try to improve. I was doing some private lessons with Talbot, and he's away at the moment, but I'll be continuing that when he gets back. But sometimes I would forget to write it. And we would just like, let's just do whatever we work on. And it was a much less productive session for me than when I actually wrote down like, a list of 6 things and just like, okay, boom. I didn't want to waste time. Like I'm like, okay, let's do this, then this, then this. And I'd look at my list and I knew exactly what I wanted to work. And I think that's hard to do that in a jiu-jitsu class, like as in have a written that, because that's a private lesson where we're working technique as well. But even just for your rolling in class, you could say, okay, I want to work from here. I want to work from here, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes jiu-jitsu is so much fun. We just want to go roll and have a laugh, and
that's the most tempting. Yeah, absolutely. And that's no one wants. Well, actually, some people want to drill. Like drilling is not that fun. Sitting there and repeating a move's not that fun. It's fun when you get it to work on someone though. So sometimes it's worth the extra effort.
It's worth it, yeah. So, Lucky, you mentioned earlier on, you're sort of getting a bit older now, and you're doing some strength conditioning. And how do you find that your recovery and your sleep has played a part in as you get as to be an older athlete? Although still young at 32, do you find it's becoming harder to recover? That sleep is becoming more vital, or how does that recovery process work for you?
Yeah. I'm trying to train less at the moment, so it's actually really hard for me to gauge like my recovery because I'm trying to train less, but I'm also training. I'm training a lot of wrestling at the moment, which is much harder on the body. So my actual my hours I'm putting in are much less than it would be if I was just doing jiu-jitsu. I think if I was doing just jiu-jitsu, I could put a lot more time in because I'm so much more efficient with my movements. Whereas wrestling, it's so many level changes and driving through, and so I'll find I'll do a wrestling session. It's not even necessarily that I'm extremely sore, but I'm really trying to keep my soreness level to a degree that I wake up and I'm like, I can't wait to train today. If that makes sense. Like sometimes you get too sore and you're like, a day off would be nice. Like if I'm like that, I'm probably not actually going to get that much out of the session. Yeah. So, I mean, like I definitely think I haven't quantified it, but I think sleep would probably play a pretty big part in my recovery. Diet probably does. Not that my diet's amazing. And what was the other thing? Oh, strength and conditioning, did you say? What was the other thing you said?
No, I was just wondering how, because you're doing like strength and conditioning now as well, and you're training jiu-jitsu and wrestling, and sort of like, how do you focus on recovery? But I think you've kind of covered that about how you feel in the morning, which is quite an interesting answer because so many people are like, I wonder, do you have an app, or I wonder, do you have a watch, or do you have a heart rate variability monitor? But you're kind of doing that self-feedback, which is really interesting, which is I get up in the morning, I'm not so sore that I need to take the day off, but I've got some soreness, but I'm still hungry to train today. I've still got that kind of fire in my belly, which is good, because I think a lot of people get kind of caught up on biofeedback instead of just listening to their body and gauging how they feel, instead of having their whole life driven by a metric of an app, So
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's the only annoying thing is sometimes I like, oh, I feel good today, and then I'll do like 3 sessions, and then I'm like, next day I'm like, oh, yeah,
Should have done that.
yeah,
Yeah. But like, on that same point as well, we've been having some conversations recently with people, amateur athletes, and as they get older, particularly, it's about, I think, having some diversification in your training as well. Like I know for me, switching constantly every day, and I would probably do 2-a-day sessions, probably 3 days of the week. I train anywhere from sort of 10 to 14 hours in a week, but I'm constantly changing between, at the moment, swimming, jiu-jitsu, and yoga. So it's constant change. So it's not like 7 days a week of just hard jiu-jitsu. And if I go to jiu-jitsu, it might be like, okay, right, Saturday morning is my big rolling day. Then I'm going to class during the week. I'll have some rolling maybe on a Thursday night, but it's not kind of all out war every time. So I'm constantly cycling those sessions to allow for those recovery each day. And like you were saying, having your sleep and your diet kind of dialed in as much as you can as well.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'm something that I haven't implemented as much as I would like, but I think there's, in terms of like a smart way to train as well, I think there's some positions in jiu-jitsu that require much less energy and going to get you much less sore. And I'd say things like 50-50 and a lot of the leg entanglements, although they might be, they're very technical, but it's like kind of different to like trying to smash past someone or, things like that, where you're going to get like very sore very quick. I think things like 50-50, which are really important, but also are not that taxing on your body. You could potentially design a program where you spend a bit more time, therefore you can spend more time on that skill per day without getting too sore. And so like trying to develop a game where you're really good at the things that don't get you that, or like you maximize your skill progression in the areas that don't make you too sore. So you can actually spend more time training without getting too sore. I think there's a whole field of that I need to get a bit more into.
Well, it's interesting. Interesting you say that, Lucky, because out of pure need this year, and I know I spoke to you about this as well earlier on the year, and many people may know I had this significant issue with my back up around my neck, and with hernia discs, bulging discs, torn brachial plexus, and severe spinal stenosis. I just stopped rolling with people that were over 100 kilos.
Yeah.
So I just went, right, that's it. If you're over 100 kilos, I'm not rolling with you. And I've said to the guys as well at the gym, look, it's nothing personal, but I'm 78 kilos. I oscillate between 77 to 79. My back is absolutely busted. You're 115. It's not happening. I'm sorry. It's just a sheer weight. And you know what's really interesting, Lucky? I don't feel half as sore as what I used to, because I would I would just roll with anybody, and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go in here and get stuck underneath, an identical purple belt to me, same amount of time, but he's got 30, 40 kilos on me. But the next day I'd wake up and I was walking around like Frankenstein, I was just couldn't even move my head. I'd be complete. They get you in Kezigatami and absolutely bust you up. But now, under 100 kilos seems to be better. And 100 kilos is still like a 50-pound weight difference for some people, which is still a lot. But it makes a significant difference not rolling with those big gorillas anymore. Sorry, gorillas, but it does.
No, I think that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, they don't really do it in judo, do they?
Or wrestling.
Or wrestling. Yeah. I actually think that's the eventual. It's funny. There's open weight jiu-jitsu comps at the moment, but I think eventually that's going to disappear. Just like there's no open weight judo or wrestling comps. Like eventually, open weight's cool when there's like the big. If there's someone who's 110 but they're slow and not too athletic, and you can be faster and move around them and so on. But it's already happening at the elite level, but even your casual competitor, I think pretty soon, you're gonna have these 115 kilo people that move like lightweights. It's too risky to fight against them.
Yeah, and they're just way too big. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, because I remember when I first started in jiu-jitsu, and I think I said earlier, I was in America training in Salt Lake City, and the trainer was actually matching people up. And he wouldn't, and I said, I'll go with that guy. He's kind of left over. And he was like, no, you're not going with him. And I was like, why? He goes, because you're like about 170 pounds. He's like 240 pounds. I was like, I don't mind. He's gone, no. It's not happening.
Yeah.
His rule was if somebody is 20 pounds more than you don't roll with them, which is probably 8 or 9 kilos.
Yeah.
You know, he was like, no, we don't do it. Don't do it for insurance purposes as well. He says, like, he says, but it's not going to help you. He says. Yeah,
I kind of agree. I mean, it's a hard one, like from, you know, the whole self-defense point of view. Like, you know, like I do think, you know, like when I started, I was, you know, as a 16-year-old, like, you know, I'd roll with all these big guys, but like, you know, you can barely get injured at 16, you know, or you do and you get recover within a week. But yeah, like for longevity, it's not good. You know? Like I would want my students, from one point of view, I wouldn't want my students to not, you know, like let's say someone gets to blue belt or purple belt and they've never rolled with anyone big before, and they would actually not be able to handle themselves just because they've never experienced that. That would be potentially a problem. But at the same time, I don't want that to be the regular training thing. I just think it's like something you just want to have them experience and learn how to deal with a big person, but then actually kind of forget it. It's a hard one. Yeah. But from a longevity point of view, it's probably better to just not roll with someone who's bigger.
Yeah, especially like the considerably bigger. Yeah, that's why I like Jocko Willink, who was on Rogan's podcast and it's his own podcast. He talks about ex-Navy SEAL. He talks about self-defense, and so his first line of defense is run. So yeah, that's why I always like. I said,
yeah. Well, you're good at that.
So I'm like, you know, we've had some guys at our gym, and you know, that's like one day we're all joking, and you know, big Tyrone that trains with us. And I said, you know, I beat Tyrone. They're like, why? I said, I would just slap him in the face and then run 100 miles. And if he can catch me, he wins. But he probably wouldn't. So, you know, so it's always the first line of self-defense is just a run and keep going.
Yeah,
so
that's very true.
So yeah. So Lucky, just wrapping up, what sort of tips would you give? You got 2 or 3 tips you might be able to give people to get to sleep after jiu-jitsu training. Like, what do you do? Do you try to get sleep straight away? Do you stay up for a while? What's your tips to wind down after training? Or do you go and watch YouTube videos?
Yeah, I usually do. That's what I was going to say. I actually think that's like a really good thing to do just before you sleep. I don't know, just like watch one match a night or something. Just like that way, if there's some sort of, I don't actually, yeah, some people tell me that like after training they can't sleep. I'm usually pretty good for that. If I have a really intense session, I think like if you're getting the full adrenaline sort of thing, then sometimes you might feel a bit funny. Well, for me, I might feel a bit funny to sleep, but I think if it's just a hard session, I'm usually fine. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of think you should be going to bed a little bit unhappy about something that happened during your training session, like a little bit, just like enough that you're like, oh, I've got to fix that. That problem. And then I don't know. I think I have no idea if there's any science for this, but if you could actually, I think if it's on your mind just before bed, maybe you're more likely to solve it in your sleep.
Maybe, or you're more likely to wake up thinking about it. So again,
I mean, I don't think it should
helps.
Yeah, maybe that's why I like to watch a video. You know, like usually if there's something I'm working on and I watch a video of someone who's very good at, you know, like at the moment it's usually a wrestling thing, but you know, I'm working a particular technique and then I watch someone who's an expert at that technique doing it in competition. I can like, okay, that's what I need to do next time. So I know what I need to do, then I just need to relax and show up to the next session and try and fix it. But, I don't really. Okay. Yeah, 3 tips for people getting to sleep. Don't take it too seriously, whatever, like, you know, if you've been training and it's seriously getting to you, like whatever's happened, then I think you're not going to learn anything from that. You know, if it's like, you know, if you're losing sleep over it, then I think you're probably got the wrong attitude to learning, if that makes sense. So like it should be, for me, like I'm very comfortable that I'm going to improve my skills. That's what happens. Like something doesn't work and through the process of just like going back to training and trying it again and again and again and thinking about it, like I'll eventually get better at whatever I'm trying to improve. So if I'm staying up all night and losing sleep because of something not working, then I'm probably not looking at it through the right lens. You know?
Yeah.
I would say try to get for me, get lots of sleep. You can get over 9-10 hours. Oh, sorry, over 8 hours. 9 would be awesome for me. I think that's probably my right amount. And nap. These aren't even along the lines of the question you asked, but they're my 3 things.
It's good, yeah. No, it's good, yeah. I actually like I like what you said about the YouTube clip actually before bed, because what I do like about it, and I know sleep scientists who listen to this podcast are jumping up and down and going, "What are you talking about?" But I like the fact that you say you come home from training, something is bugging you, like a half-guard sweep. You watch the video that addresses that problem. So now at least you go to bed with the solution in your mind. So what you're doing there is actually removing the stress from you before you go to sleep, as opposed to going to bed with the problem. So we would say the same for executives as well. Write down the solution, write down some notes, whatever it might be. But what you're saying is you're solving that issue, so you're going to bed without the stress on your head.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That sounds good.
Yeah.
You said it much better than I did.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you talk a lot. You're not very good at jiu-jitsu, but when you don't talk, you get good like you. So there you go.
Yeah.
Lockie, how can people follow you on social media or follow your jiu-jitsu tips online? I know you got some videos on YouTube that my wife spends more time watching you than she's watching me. So that's another story.
Yeah, the YouTube channel is probably the most popular thing actually. So that's Absolute MMA St Kilda.
Yep.
Otherwise, I've got Instagram, which I very rarely use, but which is, I think, Lachlan_Giles. And I've also got Facebook, which is my name, Lachlan Giles. So, yep. Hope that was a beneficial discussion for everyone.
No, it's really good. And what you got some DVDs out, Lockie, as well, that people can download or buy online. What DVDs do you have out at the moment?
I do, yeah. Okay, so I've got the High Percentage Chokes DVD, which is through BJJ Fanatics. I've got another one coming out on like my full half guard game through BJJ Fanatics. That's going to be a really big one. I also have a half guard seminar available. You'll be able to find the links to these through my YouTube channel. So if you check that, I've still got a half guard seminar available, and I've also I did something for Grappler's Guide as well, which is a online sort of platform for jiu-jitsu content on Butterfly X and Single X guard. So if you want to check that out, that would be awesome. Excellent.
All right, Lockie. Well, we hope to see an Absolute team at Quintet very shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, thanks very much for your time today. I think there's some interesting insights there from, a professional athlete and a coach that people will really enjoy and pick up out of it as well. So hopefully all the guys at the local clubs will be drilling next week.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. That's really good.
Thanks, Lockie.
Hope to see you soon. Thanks, Ian.
So that was episode 3 of season 3. Thanks once again to Lachlan Giles for doing that episode. As you may have heard there, we had to do that episode nearly twice, or one and a half anyway. So thanks to Lachlan for doing that. As always, check us out at sleep4performance.com.au on the website, or Sleep for Performance on Facebook, and at Sleep for Perform on Twitter. And you can email me at iandunigan@sleep4performance.com.au. Until next month, sleep well.